In response to your comment, JJ, I will just say, because I don't want to explain this in the group chat because it's too long. So the MK1 selling point is that MK11 ended the MK timeline and started a new timeline, right?
Right, yeah. I mean,
So-
technically, Aftermath ended all of that, I think. I think
I
it's
guess.
MK11 DLC anyway.
So MK1 is supposed to be a reset of the universe. And when I was watching trailers at Comic-Con, I was like, this is really weird. There's a lot of stuff in here I still don't understand. It turns out
it's not actually.
It's not a reset. It's the
They play it like it is for the first part of it, and it's super duper not. It's
super
it just
not.
follows on.
Yep. So that really was like, man, I don't know. Now, I'm kind of out now. I got other stuff. MK is not high on my list of things.
Yeah. I have watched now probably most of the campaign of both of those games through streamers and stuff, and it's cool where the story goes, but like I don't know that I need to play it.
Okay. Yeah. They almost got me with the Omni-Man.
I knew that would be.
That's pretty great. Yeah.
A bunch of their other DLCs are cool too. It's Homelander.
Yeah.
Peacemaker.
Cool. Yeah. There's a lot of HBO stuff in there.
Yeah, there's some other stuff going.
Yeah, pretty great. Uh, 376 episodes. We were gamers. We're talking about games already. I did not have a chance to play F-099. I'm just gonna get that out of the way right off the bat.
And what are we even doing here?
So that's the end of the podcast. Yeah. See you later. We'll talk about it next week.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and that is.
Yeah, last week was interesting. It looks like everything's working this week. My JJ and I checked it ahead of time, so we'll see. We'll see. I want to do something new on this podcast. I want to do it regularly. Are you guys ready?
All about the new.
Okay. Unprepared, you're going to answer a retro question. And it's not necessarily about a retro game, but it's going to be, this is inspired by you, Michael. I spent this past few minutes before you got on here debating with my spouse whether or not I do anything that makes me old. The only thing we could come up with is that I espouse to people to read the local newspaper thing that exists in our neighborhood that covers like our city and the two cities next to us. That is not the county newspaper, right?
Okay,
so we have
reading a physical piece of newspaper, like an actual paper printed thing.
They drop it.
Sure makes you old.
They drop it on everyone's driveway in 3 cities, and the amount of people that I hear that don't read the thing and they don't know what's going on around them in their city is very high. And they don't have a very good online presence, so I choose to read it by hand.
No shame or nothing against you there, but it is reading a physical newspaper is absolutely an old thing. I discussed this topic with my parents actually because my mom listens to the podcast.
Yeah.
Hi, mom.
Hi, mom.
Hi, mom.
Thank you, gentlemen. We were having a discussion about what we do that's old, and my dad's like, "Well, I still read the newspaper."
Yeah,
and my mom's like, "Yeah, you subscribe to multiple newspapers."
Oh wow, I'm subscribed.
For sure, old.
I'm subscribed. You're subscribed to the New York Times, I think. I'm subscribed to the County Register just to get some news stories and stuff like that I can't access. But this one is like a local thing, and it really only is readable in any format in the paper thing. And the report, the writing's not. It's not. I'm trying to come up with like what the awards for reporting are, but I can't remember them off the top of my head.
Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But I think Michael and I are only subscribed to the games stuff, so you do get like some amount of articles with that, but it's not the whole paper.
We have an LA Times subscription, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Okay. Well, so inspired by that question, I wanted to throw at you something that I'm going to call a retro question, but it's not necessarily a name a thing that is retro. It is more along these lines, and this is something that happened to me this week. Someone laughed near me this past weekend at a kids soccer game. They had a deep, loud, I wouldn't say piercing, but it was a laugh that cut through the crowd in a manner that triggered in me a visceral reaction in which I could picture the Great Fairy fountains from Ocarina of Time and the Great Fairy laugh, when she throws her head back in the Great Fairy fountain. And I literally thought it was identical. My brain took over. I could only picture that in my head for minutes at a time. So the retro question of this week, is there a sound that you hear that triggers a reaction in you where you think of a game?
Absolutely. I have this one queued up because it's sitting next to me on the floor. Our child has a toy on it was the crib arch, the arch that goes over a crib. It's got toys dangling from it. One of the toys on the arch sounds exactly like there's a Korok nearby noise from Breath of the Wild.
Ah, interesting.
And every time I hear it, I'm like, who's playing Zelda?
I've noticed that in recent years, a lot of, I might even blame Apple for this. A lot of sounds, just like a lot of apps and everything else, have become homogenized into like a more softer, similar palette, So like notification sounds are so similar between things. It's just a question of, what pitch it's at,
Mm-hmm. But there's also definitely a lot of people using like open source sound libraries to get sounds that are royalty free.
Those are 1,000% more accessible. Yeah. That's a very good point. It's probably even that. Very cool. JJ, you're up.
I don't have a great one for this. I don't know if this is going to play over the microphone or if this will even work. No, it doesn't. Okay.
No. Oh, yeah. Was that supposed to be an easy button?
No, it's the GG button. But I don't have a good one.
So I do have that same reaction as you, although it's not necessarily from a game. If somebody tells me GG, I do hear in my head the StarCraft announcer shouting
yelling GG. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I think that comes from us having gone to Korea and watching a
StarCraft,
game. Yeah. Watching a couple games. Yeah. Okay, that's our retro question of the week. Welcome back, everybody. Michael and JJ. Hello. Wow. It's been a little bit busy in the world of games around us. And I think we need to talk about because we talked about it a little bit before, and I have another question about it. But Microsoft and Activision actually closed. I don't know if you saw this. The deal's officially done.
The only bad news is CotC sticks around until the 1st of January, right?
Yeah, at least, right? The contract for him to not have a immediate $15 million payout, right?
So he's already getting an insane amount of money. I don't think they want to give him any more.
$700 million worth of stock, I think.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, more on that later. It's closing. It's done. That means Blizzard and Activision and all their games are on Microsoft's payroll now. I think people assume certain things will immediately hit Game Pass. Things like Call of Duty, right? Anything to get people to subscribe to Game Pass that's not already there.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering how deep you think the well goes into companies like Blizzard, though, who have their own subscription models for things like WoW or paid programs like I think you play Diablo 4 still, like battle passes in Diablo 4. What do you think? Do you think WoW or Diablo are headed to Game Pass? Like, what does that mean for Blizzard as a company? Because we've been playing their games a long time, and if WoW Classic is free, I might have to reevaluate how much I play Octopath.
I feel like they wouldn't necessarily make it free, but maybe they'll come up with a way to sign into it through your Game Pass account. right?
Yeah,
so give you an option that your profile will just seamlessly merge with your Blizzard profile, so that when you launch it, it pulls your credentials and away you go.
So I think due to the nature of Battle.net, right, there is going to be some period of time before anything like that can happen. But I think that that's probably an end goal, right? Is like get all that stuff that's sequestered on Battle.net onto Microsoft's connected whatever it is, right?
That might be Battle.net, honestly.
And maybe it is. Who knows? I don't know. But I know that there's that would be a goal that Microsoft has. However, that takes money and time to do all that work. How much return are you getting of porting like StarCraft remastered to Game Pass?
Maybe you would get some there because people that didn't buy it. I really worry about the return.
People that didn't buy it aren't going to buy it on Game Pass either. They're just
but if it's on Game Pass, it would be free, right? You know,
they don't get any money by having people play it. They want you to buy it, right?
No,
there's no transactions in that game,
right? Which is
versus like Diablo 4, where they can then sell you the battle passes.
Well, but a Game Pass has tons of games that you pay just to play, right? Like.
Sure, yeah.
So StarCraft would be a good example. Like, WoW, actually, for me, I heard people, this is a question I'm asking you guys specifically, because I heard and read people slobbering over the idea that WoW would just be free on Game Pass. And I couldn't think of a reason why it would be, actually. I was trying to fish for this because I am mathematically, it makes absolutely no sense for something they're already trying to charge, what is it, $20 a month for, to then add it to a thing that already only costs $20 a month. If you're Microsoft, you're then losing money by putting it on
foolish. There. It would be very foolish. There are still somehow millions of people playing WoW. I don't know that they're at the like 10, 15 million highs like they were back, several years ago.
Who knows? But there are still, I think they stopped reporting numbers.
They did, because they're down from the peaks, right?
Yeah.
But even if you have 2 million, 1.5 million people times $20, that's $20 million. Are like giving that to every person on Game Pass is just a recipe to wreck all the WoW servers immediately, right? And then get very little long-term gain out of it for the, versus the $20 million you can get if you just keep things the way they are.
Unless you open it up for new signups through Battle Pass for a limited time, get new people in, and then after 3 months or whatever, the charges start.
If you have Game Pass, you get to
the counter argument to that
20.
Is that I believe that is already the case. I believe you can play World of Warcraft through like level 20 or 40 or something for free right now.
Okay. So yeah, never mind.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, you may end up being right, Michael. Maybe they do something like that, or give you, credits or something. You can buy credits with your Battle Pass subscription.
I could see a Xbox Game Pass subscriber gets X
1 month
amount of tokens
free,
per year or whatever that pay for game time.
Right. There's a lot of stuff that they could do, right? One thing I think that will happen, Microsoft, unlike Blizzard, has been interested in putting their stuff on every platform available.
Yeah, it's been interesting to hear all these, like a lot of the antitrust stuff was solved by the fact that they were saying, look, our goal is to literally make every game playable everywhere.
What will happen,
except on Sony platforms.
Soon, look, all the platforms that will have us is what Microsoft will say, right? Sony is not interested in having them, I'm sure. But what will happen soon is like they're going to put Diablo 4 on Steam. There's a Steam page for that already up. You can go find that. They're going to put probably like the latest Call of Duty hasn't been on Steam for a while, I think, right? They're going to bring that back. They're going to put like Crash Bandicoot, right? That's like a recent game that came out. They'll probably put that on Steam and probably Game Pass.
Yeah, it's really
those Tony
funny.
Hawk games, those recent Tony Hawk games that Blizzard bought the developer of.
Isn't it
that will come?
Isn't it just within the last 3 years that we've gone through? Everyone was on Steam. Then literally everyone said, no more. We're all making our own stores, and EA and Activision and Blizzard and Ubisoft and Rockstar and they all made their own stores. And then Epic popped up and some of them went to Epic, but most of them didn't. And now we're back to Microsoft threw its weight into the ring and said every game should be everywhere, and now everything has collapsed back in on itself. I don't understand how this happened in 3 years.
You are forgetting how long stuff like Origin and Uplay,
but they've been around, but they weren't required. No, they weren't required though. You could go buy games, right? Like they didn't delist all this Call of Duty stuff for a while, even though they had them on their other stores. They didn't delist. Like you can still get Apex on Steam, even though it's an Origin or whatever EA Play or whatever game.
Yeah, because Origin has like shut down now.
Well, they have their own thing anymore, now, right? Because they went back. They have their own. It's a new thing called EA whatever, which you also get through GamePass, by the way. I don't know how they're making money there. Who's losing money?
Well, I mean, they're making
that?
money because Microsoft is paying them like $100 million to get their stuff on, right? Yeah. So they just decided to insert themselves as the middleware layer to get all the tracking data and your, user stuff to sell all that stuff, right? That's just what they decided, rather than attempt to recoup the 30% cut of zero because no one buys it from their store.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, I think WoW is the most interesting question because, you could see a world where they're like, okay, WoW's on Battle.net. Do we put WoW on Steam and then like sell monthly subscriptions through Steam?
Why not?
We're getting a cut, right? You're not getting 100% of that money, but you're getting some, and that's better than no money, which is what we're getting if people aren't getting it through Battle.net. Is that worth it? I don't know, right? And then I think you're totally right. Like I don't see how it would be possible based on what they've been doing with like Starfield and some of this other stuff that they wouldn't just say Call of Duty day one free.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It has to be. Okay. Epic, Telltale, Unity. The list goes on. I think there have been a couple others since I wrote this list a week ago. Layoffs all the time, everywhere. Layoffs.
Yep. Seems like a pretty rough time to be a game developer. And that sucks.
I don't understand. Sounds like to me
there's a ton of amazing games that just came out. Now all the studios are downsizing, I guess. I don't know what the
overwork from
is or whatever.
Overproduction from COVID, like where they were trying to catch up and now they don't need as many people.
Maybe did they just hire people on for project work instead of
that's
long-term
kind of
employment?
how games seems to work in many cases.
I think that's always the case, right? And when a game releases and then goes into maintenance mode or whatever, they cut a lot of staff. That's
but
very common.
Some of them sound pretty bad. Like Telltale's basically laying everyone off.
I mean, I think their latest couple games have been, well, first off, that Telltale company is not even the same company, right? They sold the name to some people who used to work there. Yeah. And then they hired a bunch of people and then now they didn't make it again. And like, their latest game that came out bombed. Right. So it's like, well, that's all right. You see how that goes. Right.
Yeah. Hey, it's Andy. I don't often interrupt the podcast without saying some sort of technical issue is happening, but I wanted to interrupt this story real quick before we talked about Harebrained Schemes, because another story, as often happens to us, came out the next day about Harebrained and Paradox and their relationship dissolving, as well as a few other things. And I think it's no secret that JJ and I really like this company and the games they've produced. And I don't think my frustration with this situation from the outside, obviously, is probably worse on the inside, really captures how we feel about a company like this being put in a terrible position. And I think next week we will talk more about Harebrained's situation, hopefully what they're going to get out of the split with Paradox, and maybe we can even talk about Lamplighters League. So listen on for the past when we didn't know that what we were talking about was actually probably going to happen, and know that we're going to cover this more because we think Harebrained deserves it as a company.
I mean, Andy, this is more related to us, but it sounds like this past summer, Harebrained Schemes got hit by a huge layoff as well. Like
I missed 80%. That one. 80%?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the word at that time was that their pitch for BattleTech 2 had been denied by Paradox, which is infuriating to me.
Yeah, after they spent so long talking up Paradox as how they were going to be a partner that really like expanded their games, and Harebrained did some great games before. Not to say that BattleTech, which is one of our favorite games of the year that it came out, wasn't great, but like all that before, this Lamplighters League. Do you know what their recent game was called?
Lamplighters League.
Lamplighters League, because I said it.
And it has been written down by Paradox as a complete loss. They have just like that. They've given up on that game.
So if your job is to be the producer, the releaser, the place that puts out information about games you're trying to sell, you should probably make sure people have heard of it. I would say that Harebrained got the short end of the stick on this one, because I used to get emails weekly from Paradox Games about all the stuff that they were releasing all the time into our podcast inbox. And over the years, it has trickled into California drought circa 2 years ago. I didn't even know the Lamplighters League existed or had come out.
There was also the same source of information where I was getting all this about those layoffs that supposedly happened. Again, this is not like corroborated, right? Also, we're saying that at around the same time, there was a changeover at the top of Paradox in terms of like the management there. And so maybe the management that was friendly to them and, invested in all that changed over or something like that. And the new management decided they didn't want to do this anymore, which is just sad.
Yeah. Well, what a travesty. I mean, we'll never see another game like BattleTech. Not for years.
Yeah,
years and years.
Really depressing.
That's too bad. Okay, well, let's turn it around and laugh about something else. Have either of you been to the Netherlands?
I think maybe I was there for like a day at some point.
I have not.
But it's been like 15 years or more.
Well, you know a famous person from the Netherlands. Vincent van Gogh.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, yeah.
The man he doesn't have, but they have a museum. It's not his museum. It's a museum about him, I guess. It's dedicated for him. I don't think it's just his artwork. But anyway, have you heard of this story yet that I'm about to tell you about the Van Gogh Museum? No. Okay. All right. Good. I'm very happy to relate to you the story that I read before this that picked up my mood after thinking about a lot of these downer times. Something I couldn't believe happened. The Van Gogh Museum decided a couple years ago that they were going to hold an exhibit. Van Gogh styled paintings, not his paintings, but other people's modern paintings in the Van Gogh style of Pokemon. The universe, I guess, not just every Pokemon, right? You can look this up. There are just Google Van Gogh. Well, try not to read the news story, but if you look up Van Gogh Pokemon.
I'm not doing any research during the podcast.
I'm just saying, like, there's some very cute images of like a Pikachu in a Van Gogh painting. Very funny. They had this thing. Let me paint a picture for you. The Van Gogh Museum holds this special exhibit. There are lines out the door, ready to come into the exhibit. The museum opens, and the videos show hardly anyone out looking at the new paintings. Instead, where are the lines, gentlemen?
I will just have to assume there's some kind of Pokemon bullshit merch involved.
I was going to say the gift shop.
The gift shop. There was apparently much exclusive merchandise, including a Van Gogh painting Pokemon card of Pikachu. And there are videos of grown men and adults shoving each other to pile into this tiny museum gift shop, fighting over Pokemon cards in the midst of the Netherlands. I loved and laughed at it. And immediately, I guess, the Pokemon company said, don't worry, we're going to print more of these so that we can devalue them.
Try and save the poor museum.
Yeah.
That is
what causes this, you guys? What causes this? I don't get it.
I mean, Andrew, you know exactly what it is. Yeah. Don't be acting like you don't know. It's people trying to flip it to make a quick buck because they think it's rare and scarce. It's just the same. It's the same thing.
Scalping.
Since magic,
I know what causes
everything. You know.
I know what causes scalping, but I don't understand like the lengths the scalping has gotten to. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
You know, it's hard out there. I saw a article on a social media website of grown men fist fighting to get into a Costco before opening in order to buy allocated alcohol.
Oh no. What type was this, like whiskey or something?
Yeah. Some like super rare, like 2 bottles in, the state kind of thing. And some people like throwing full on punches and stuff. It's just really like kid stuff, man. It is so bad for everything.
Yeah. It's but
like good on the company for doing the right thing here, right? Being like, we're gonna make like 50 million of these, so
I understand
no rush, guys.
There is scarcity in the world, and we're gonna talk about it in a second with like a game thing again. That's not Pokemon. I understand there's scarcity in the world. You can't produce 1 million of everything and just hope they all sell, right? Like you have to produce an amount that will, in theory, sell close to out, if not completely out. But the idea of the scarcity coming from the scalping, this happened in toys, and has now pretty much, as far as I can tell, I should get Ken on to talk about it, or maybe we'll talk about it on Carbon Scoring. It seems like that has somewhat collapsed, the toy scalping, where everyone was just buying every Star Wars toy that came out for years, because now they've realized like they're just holding them and no one's buying them anymore. But it's odd to me that like whiskey and it's expanded out from collectorship markets to merch at a Van Gogh museum.
I think the thing that you correctly noted there is that it took years for this problem to resolve itself, right? The people thought it continued to be valuable for a long time. It just takes like the timeline of the product into account there, right?
Yeah.
Whiskey takes many, many years to create. And so it takes a long time for those hoarders and people doing that stuff to realize that their stuff isn't worthless because they keep making more, right?
Right.
Whereas, a paper card or a Pokemon card or whatever, the Pokemon company can snap their fingers and create 100,000 of them, right?
Right.
For, little cost effectively. Magic is in this same place where there's a bunch of cards that are worth like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they could snap their fingers and recreate millions of them if they wanted, right? But, they don't because the reserve list or some dumb thing, right?
Well, it's funny, though, because even then people have come up with ways to evaluate the older ones. It's like, well, this is the first printing, right? That happens in comics. Like, well, this one's a first printing, so that's worth more. So, interesting. This is a 20-minute lead in to talking about the email that I got today that we all already talked about, but I wanted to get your thoughts on the Analogue 3D, one of the most notorious companies for making sure to have low print runs of things in the gaming world. For those that don't know, Analogue makes things like the Analogue Pocket, probably most famous for the Super NT or the NT Mini, FPGA based retro consoles that play old cartridges but are new production electronics,
and like use like high quality materials, high end,
right? Like the Analogue Pocket costs $220, which honestly not that bad considering. The NTs, the Super NT and the NT Mini were much more ridiculous in price. I think the NT Mini towards the end was eking towards $500, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say one of them was like 4 something. So yeah, that sounds right.
I mean, just the screen on a Pocket alone is probably worth $200. If you've ever tried to replace your iPhone screen or your Android screen, you know how those get. Well, they're doing an N64. How exciting. I think it's exciting.
The funny response to this that I saw was, wow, it's so great that Analogue is doing so well that they can afford to be remaking the bad consoles too.
You know,
it made me giggle a bit.
I'm not going to defend the technical things that come with that, but their whole shtick has always been to have the console that lasts longer with less power. And the N64, while not as good as the other things at its time, is still memorable to a lot of people. And whether or not it was a bad quote unquote console doesn't mean that people don't like it.
This is someone being completely flippant. I don't want to attempt to make judgments.
No, I know, but a lot of people, I think it is in vogue among retro gamers to bag on the N64 as hard as possible. Like it's not cool to say you like the N64 anymore, right?
Sure, but they can only do that with the benefit of being able to look back, right? Like at the time, what the N64
was fine.
Did was
the controller sucked.
Was incredible. Sure, yeah.
I mean, at the time, you could see that like Quest 64 was a terrible piece of garbage, but then you have stuff that's like, you know, stands the test of time, stuff like Ocarina, Mario 64, stuff like that, right?
And those games are just as janky, and who cares, right? Who cares?
No one is out here arguing that Mario 64 was bad, right? Because they can't. It's like it's a transcendent piece of media, right? Like it's like a mind-blowing moment in video games.
I think this will sell well because I think there is a closeted a lot of people that really love the N64. I even am one of them. I think my nostalgia for staying up late and with a guide and playing Ocarina, right, and Vigilante 8 and Perfect Dark and you know, like, God, that console had NFL Blitz, man. They even had a StarCraft port on the N64, okay? It's a console that could do a lot.
I don't know that that's the game you want to be calling out.
What, the StarCraft port? Not good. It's kind of bad. I didn't say it was good. I'm just saying they managed to port StarCraft to the N64.
It happened, though. It happened.
It did. They got it onto the dang cartridge, man. I am the target audience for this, and I'm not going to buy it.
So I want to know why. Because I know your reasons for not having bought it in the past, which I think is reasonable and understandable. But I feel like you've turned a leaf since then. So what's the new Andrew's take?
I would have bought this in the past. I think the new me is concerned with bloat in the collecting, right? And in the trying to be focused. And while I still have, I have the Analog Pocket, right? I have that. I have a DS. I have a lot of handheld stuff. My focus now is to really like try to pare down what I have and expanding it and looking at something like this that I sold my N64 a while ago and I don't actually regret it, right? Like I could have held on to it and I kept the games I really cared about. We talked about this before and I actually was listening, I think years ago, and we could all reevaluate our positions on this. Maybe we should. Years ago, I said I didn't really understand why you'd keep a game around you couldn't play. And I still don't know if I agree with people that go get games graded. I mean, it kind of just doesn't make any sense to me, but at the same token, it's your thing. Do whatever you want with it. But that was years and years and years ago before emulation was what it is today. There's no concern, I don't think, but maybe either of you know. Is there any concern really with other than the DS keeping games at this point alive, right? In in so much as like, oh, we got to keep the physical media because there's, no, I don't think so. ROMs have kind of saved games in general, right?
I don't know about games in general, but certainly games of a certain age, right? I think the idea that old games are popular wouldn't exist without ROMs, right? That just wouldn't be the case.
Michael
Agreed,
ROMs relatively heavily, not a ton, but you used to ROM a bit.
Yeah, a lot more than I do now. But yeah, I think ROMs probably got people into games that they wouldn't otherwise have because of a lack of access to them. In most cases, I think because too much time had passed. But you have to think that at least some subset of the people who got into games through ROMs are collectors, and so would then go out and want to try and find a physical copy of the game that they were playing.
But to me, and I don't mean for them, right? I mean to me personally now, this many years later, I don't anymore feel like if I have, which is true, my original inbox Zelda games here that I value because I played them for hours and multiple times. I can't count the amount of times I beat Majora's Mask. I don't know why. I really like that one. I can still have Majora's Mask here, but if I was here now and I still have my N64, I don't think I would prefer to play it in the N64 versus on my Steam Deck.
Yeah, I mean, I think the convenience and the ability to be able to use it, in more situations is important.
So
right?
I think a lot of these things now, to me now, is that a shelf piece that I can put out that, and how many of those do I really need? Because games don't need anymore to be the thing that is not in a box on your shelf, right? They used to be. I don't know. I don't feel like it's as maybe it felt pretentious before when people were buying copies to display because they should be played, but you don't need to do that anymore to play them. Like the emulation is on everything. You could go get a Mister. You could get a Steam Deck. You could get a ROG Ally. You could get a Miu Mini. You could get a.
You can just play it on your phone, man. Like your iPhone has an emulator. The Android's phones all have emulators.
Yeah.
Like you could just play it there.
Yeah, that market has expanded so widely, and so supported. I think possibly by the idea of like I could collect just the things that interest me. And so my reaction to it is that's really cool that it can take an N64 cart and upscale it to 4K hardware, plug it into a TV, and it just works, right? But I don't need it. Finally. I did miss out on getting one of those see-through analog pockets that I wanted though.
I think it's good. I think you're right that it's going to sell crazy. I think Analogue is also really good at gauging the excitement of their audience and will make just not enough of them.
Absolutely.
So, and then they'll be, oh, will we remake it? I don't know, maybe. And then they remake it, but it's like a different color now. And so then now the other ones are collectibles, right?
You can be guaranteed this first one will be a very similar shade to the original gray, right? And then they'll do the clear ones that are very similar shades to the original clear ones.
Yeah, that not green, but kind of green one, right?
What do they call that? Jungle green? Jungle green, I think is what it was. Jungle green was worth the most. My controller sold for $70.
Donkey Kong Country, not Donkey Kong 64. Not a good game.
No.
It has reached meme status at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, not good. I don't know. I think that's really the corner that I've turned recently is like I don't emulate tons of stuff. It's not like I'm every night on my Steam Deck emulating something, but the idea that I needed to collect and hold something in case I wanted to play it, and the idea that like I should grab these FPGA consoles in case I want to play the games seems so unnecessary now, thankfully. To me. I mean, like if you're a collector of these things, they make a lot of sense.
Here's the thing that I think is great about these, right? These things are high quality. They are expensive, as you have noted before. And I think this one will probably be a new bar.
I think it'll be at least $500.
Yeah, I couldn't see how it could be less. And the thing that's good about it is it guarantees there will be something that exists that will be able to play these carts into, the more distant future. And that's good for people that want and feel they need to be able to play the cart.
I think that if you were a person, and this is cool now, that is just so hyper focused on the N64, right? Like that's your thing. You need to get one of these things. But I don't know it expands past that anymore. Thankfully.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there.
Yeah, and I'm not doing that. So it's nice to feel focused when you see something like this. Right before, I definitely didn't. I wanted an NT, and I had one, and I ended up selling it. And I had a Super NT, and I traded it. And I had so many things. I had Super Nintendos. I have 2 NESs. I have this, that, and the other. And it's like, it's unfocused, and it feels good to react to something. And so, just if you're thinking about stuff like this, maybe reevaluate. I don't know. That's my thought. You know what? N64 games did not have. Maybe I should ask Michael.
DLC. That they did not. And we've talked in the past about the nature of releasing a complete game and just letting it be that.
Yeah, we talked about last week or the week before about patching games. When we were talking about the AC patch.
Yeah, and how much should a patch be? But I think what in that same sort of news vein, I was a little surprised in the last week to see an announcement come out from the producer and director of Tears of the Kingdom, blockbuster game that dropped earlier this year. They were being interviewed by Telegraph, and they came out and said that there are no plans to release any sort of DLC for Tears of the Kingdom. That the game is the game, and they hope that people enjoy it for what it is.
Oh, that's cool to hear.
Yeah. And I have, in this day and age, I have a lot of respect for a game developer saying, you know what? We're good with this. Like something that big, sure, they could print money by making some DLC and releasing it, or, breadcrumbing it out in front of players over the course of a year. But they decided, we're proud of what we made. It's going to stand on its own.
Breath of the Wild had like DLC costumes and stuff like that. They're not going to do any of that stuff, huh?
No, I think Breath of the Wild had 2 big DLCs.
They had big DLCs, and they included little things alongside them if you bought both the DLC pack,
yes,
or whatever. There's like little, you get this costume, or you could buy it separately, Huh.
I think that's cool.
I think that's great. I mean, especially for a game that big, to just be like, no, you're good. You got it all.
Yeah, here's your sandbox. Go nuts.
I mean, from what I've heard, I haven't played the game yet, but from what I've heard, if you decide you want to, make vehicles or whatever, you're just going to play that game forever anyway.
I was going to say, with the customizability with that stuff in there, maybe they decided there's nothing we could sell that wouldn't be cooler than the stuff people are already building.
Cool. I mean, I wish I bet there are more games out there that aren't getting DLC that are just smaller games. Although
100%.
Although I mean, even smaller quote unquote games like Spiritfarer and stuff had, I don't know if it counted as DLC. They were definitely like patches that added more and more to the game. What about that versus DLC? We didn't really cover that in talking about Armored Core, but like, what if, your 1.0 comes out and you really only get the full game at like 1.3? Thoughts? And I'm not talking about MMOs or whatever, where the whole point is to keep you playing forever and they need to give you more stuff to do. But like,
I think it depends
games.
on what you mean, right? You know, there's different ways you can make this argument, right?
What if Baldur's Gate came out and they were like, that's it, that's 1.0, and people got to the end and they're like, huh, that's interesting. It doesn't seem to quite have an ending. And then they said, well, in 1.1, you'll get the remainder of the missing parts of the story.
Did you just describe early access?
No, because there's difference between early access and
that game did go in early access, and they had one.
Absolutely, right? They had Act 1. That makes sense, right? You know, you're getting a 0.8 version, not a 1.0. But once you hear a 1.0, you would expect to finish it and be done if you wanted to. Thoughts? Or am I stretching this too far?
Yeah, I'm not aware of games doing that, right? There definitely are a lot more games that do the second thing where, you know, Cyberpunk had this recently, right? Where in the most recent DLC release, they just completely overhauled all the skills, a lot of the missions, a lot of the stuff in the original game also, such that, you know, if you wanted to play that original game without that DLC, you know, even if you didn't buy that DLC, you got all those changes now, and so you kind of can't go back, right?
Yeah. Yeah, CD Projekt Red, by the way, 10 or 15% of their staff recently laid off, and I think they just laid off a bunch of people at Molasses Flood this week too. Project Red. They're unionized too, which is weird. You don't hear about that very often.
Yeah, I mean, I think large portions of the workforce at Ubisoft in France
Europe
are unionized as well. Yeah.
Which is why you don't hear about Ubisoft Europe as much as the other ones, maybe. And the misbehavior at the other ones. You know what I mean? Oh boy.
Well, who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I lack a good transition to go from DLC to shucking.
Is that's the transition that's attempting?
I think that might just end up being the transition.
That's just the hard cut.
All right. Well, are you guys fans of oysters?
Michael, go first. Yeah, Michael, describe why you like oysters.
Oh, there's something to me about the that kind of fresh brininess of a good oyster that I really like. And then, you know, you add all the classic toppings, the mignonette, the lemon juice, the Tabasco, whatever you like on your oyster if you like fresh oysters.
Mm-hmm. So Andrew, oyster person or?
So until 5 years ago, I didn't eat any of those types of shelled animals. I had other shelled animals. However, I tried mussels a while ago, like a long while ago, and I thought, you know, this ain't so bad. But I still couldn't get over the fact that for an oyster, you just sort of swallow the whole thing real quick.
Yep.
Yeah. And I didn't really understand why that was a food I would want to eat. And I often say I'll try anything, you know, really. But something about the idea that you put all this stuff on it, right? Like you
or
dump
not, to be fair.
Garlic. Okay, sure. Yeah. But when you watch the pros, Michael knows he's one of the pros because this story ends with Michael and friend of the pod, Matt. But you watch them and they have their own ritual. Every little oyster is a ritual of exactly one dot of this, exactly one pinch of that, exactly this and exactly that. And then I just shoot the whole thing down my gullet. I didn't get it. And I still don't quite get it, but I did end up saying, all right, fine. I got to get over this and try an oyster. So we had a little party and it was like, when we have this party, I want you experts, go get the good oysters, go get all the stuff and we'll do oysters and I'll try a couple. I tried them. I thought they were okay. And I don't despise anyone that likes them. I get it in terms of you do taste more than I thought you did. I wouldn't go out doing it, but the wife quite adores them. So oftentimes if we go to a special meal, we will order a small plate and I will eat one and she will eat the other four.
Sure. So
that was a long story. I didn't think it was going to be that long.
You really took your time explaining that you are not fully against them, but not all the way in the tank. So, hot tank, because see they're sea.
I see what you did there.
Ocean tank. So I'm closer to Andy than I am Michael on this spectrum. I'm not a big oyster lover. There's something about the texture of it coming down as I eat it that I don't like that much. And I don't dislike it either. I like the tastes. I like, that lemon flavor or the hot sauce or whatever. But I just, I'll have like 2, 3, maybe 4, and now we're pushing it, and then I'm kind of done.
Okay. Yeah, that's about where I'm at.
So, as a fun family activity, we went to the Carlsbad Aqua Farm recently. And if no one knows what that is, I don't blame you. I didn't know what it was.
Okay.
It has been in operation since like 1950s, apparently.
An actual aquatic farm?
Yes, where they grow oysters and mussels.
How are there... what are the reviews on theirs? Because some people are very... And not so much with mussels. Mussels are kind of mussels as far as I can tell.
Because mussels are frequently cooked.
Yes.
Yeah, so you have like bigger and smaller, but they're also, there's no like, well, East Coast mussels versus West Coast mussels,
Sure. So as oysters, a non-oyster connoisseur, it's going to be hard for me to answer that question. But here's what I can tell you, right?
Uh-huh.
The oysters that this place makes are gigantic.
Ooh.
If you think like, oh, these oysters are like, it's so cute how these small little shells and like these little things, and you just kind of like bloop and they're gone. What if the oyster, the meat part, was the size of your hand?
Oh my, that sounds like too much.
Ooh. I felt like I needed a fork and knife for some of these.
Are they flavor-wise super briny like the Blue Point ones that Michael likes?
So they're definitely very different. We were, as part of the tour, they show you, how they make them and a whole bunch of other stuff. As part of the tour, at the end, you are given 6 oysters, 3 from, in this case, British Columbia, and 3 from Carlsbad, where we were.
Mm.
And so you could taste them back to back, and there is a noticeable difference in the flavor, right? Not only are the Carlsbad ones all uniformly bigger, but also they taste significantly different.
Mm.
Also, I am told by the people there, which again, hard to know, they are also cheaper because they don't sell, they don't make that many. This place isn't gigantic. It's pretty small.
Okay.
But you can buy them from them for like $30 for a dozen, which is
good?
a good deal.
Okay.
The thing I was quoted was like 6 oysters at a restaurant nearby is like $25.
Yeah,
so it's half effectively.
Cleaned and ready and
right. And the other thing you got to do is you get to shuck these oysters yourself. So both these case they were from British Columbia and the Carlsbad one, they show you, they give you a little knife and a glove, and they show you how to do it, and then you get to open them yourself. Mm-hmm. This knife, by the way, you could not cut butter with this thing. It is so dull.
Oh, it is. It's made for one purpose and one purpose only:
stabbing and slicing that thing open.
Shove and twist.
That's right. And doing it is way harder than it looks. I have never done this before.
I've never shucked an oyster. Are they attached to stuff and they have a bunch of seaweed in them like a mussel, or are they more clean from the get-go?
Oysters are shut completely. They're filter feeders, but they do not latch on to things the way mussels do with like those little braids.
Okay. All right. So you've set the stage. Go ahead. How do you open this thing?
So you get this knife, and there's a certain point at the hinge in the back of the mussel that you got to hit, oyster that you got to hit and jam down hard into. And I've never I didn't really get a good sense for it because I only had 6, so it's not like a huge amount. And then at some point you just got to make this twist move, and that eventually just pries it open just enough to let any amount of air in, and then like all the water comes pouring out basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then, once you've gotten that part, then you just got to sort of flatten the knife over and go along a certain side. I think it's the right side, because like a human heart, the muscles the muscles from the oyster that attach the two shells together and pull it closed are on one side every time. And so you just got to slide the knife over there until you hit that muscle and just make it disconnect. And then the shell just pops right off like nothing.
Huh.
And then you have to take the knife, and they called it the Carlsbad flip. But it's just like you reach under the bottom of it and disconnect the other side of that muscle so that the oyster will slide out. And then during that process, flip it over. They say the flipping it over makes it look prettier for Instagram. So that's what the lady was like. Hey, if you want your muscles to look really good and pretty, like they might serve you in a restaurant, flip this over this way. All the restaurants do this. And they were right. If you didn't flip it over, it looked kind of like weird and flat and watery. And you flip it over, and then it looks all plump and juicy on the top. So there you go. They were pretty good. But, I can't eat this many oysters. But it was a really, really fun experience. And, learning how they make them and how they grow them is really interesting. The tour guide said this is the only one of these aqua farms within 300 miles.
Wow.
The next closest one being up in San Francisco somewhere.
For oysters specifically?
I guess.
Okay.
But I guess the thing about oysters is they need a lot of water, right? Movement of water in and out. And
so they need to be near like a outlet.
This one happens to be near what used to be a power plant and is now a desalination plant. So there's a lot of water moving through there.
Huh.
Got it.
And as a result of this, like the high volume of water and like the processes they use to sort of like breed the oysters and sort of like speed make them, they can grow them bigger and faster than a lot of other oyster farms.
Very cool.
So very interesting. And through their expertise in water and all this stuff, they have now also started growing wasabi.
What? Oh yeah, because you need a ton of water for wasabi.
You need a ton of water, and they have like a closed loop thing with fish below it and like running water and like
that's right,
hydroponics and stuff that are trying to grow wasabi. And they said they have some, but they're just not sure how good it is yet. So they're
it takes a long time. It takes like
it does, yeah,
a year, I think. All right. Well, if people want to know more about shucking or they have an idea for our retro question, sound, visceral reaction, I don't know, where would that go?
They can send that to podcast@weweregamers.com, an email address that we do totally check regularly.
You can also check it regularly. Don't answer it regularly.
No, but we check it.
Andy, that's what he said. Why are you contradicting me? So rude.
But no, we do like to compile emails every once in a while and do an email episode, respond to the good ones.
Mm-hmm.
So make them good.
Make them good. Yeah, that's right.
You can also find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, We Were Gamers on all those places. And find us on YouTube, youtube.com/@weweregamers.
we didn't talk about COTC, man. I don't know. We don't have time to fit it in every time. Well, it's just become an MMO to me. Like, I don't have any way to distinguish it other than the fact that I'm not playing with anyone, but like I'm talking to you guys about it all day, every day. So it feels like an MMO in that respect. Like, where are you leveling at? What are you doing? Like, same exact thing. And the release pacing and everything to me feels like, and like, if you're going to talk about an MMO, you got to spend like 25 minutes a week going through all the updates.
It really is. I mean, that's, it really is, right?
I don't understand how it's working for them, but it's working for me.
Y'all win.
Yeah. Maybe next week after we get the big update and we can talk about all the characters we got in the pull on Renew. Writing it down.
It's gonna be 110 pull done, right?
I'm gonna get her on 7 because I've had a lot of bad luck lately.
7 10 pulls?
Oh no, I meant like I've paid my dues. I'm getting her on pull number 7.
Single pull 7. There you go.
Yeah.
I sent you guys a snapshot of some summary bits of stuff we were talking about earlier. From
do you still have that list before you go of the? Or did you put it in a photo? What did you do with that list of like things we need to start accumulating for the 3-year anniversary? Because I gotta like map that out. I dusted everything.
I don't think
I put it in a.
I think, Andy, just keep collecting the class up seals and stop dusting them, and I think you'll be fine. Like,
I think that's the big thing.
It's not going to kill you because you will continue to get a lot of them through continuing to do hunts and whatnot, and then just keep buying them in your tower resets.
It's just a question.
The gold ones are the hardest to get. So
it's a question of how hard I need to work, or like when I can start dusting them again. We also didn't talk fantasy football. I gotta write that down because I should have ranted about the fact that I have no running backs left. Literally one. Oh boy, I'll write that down for next week. Unless you didn't get cut, right?
No, I don't think I will because Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert continue to have the connection that is saving that team.
Okay, good. Then
I mean, also Kyren Williams did well, so I think I'll be fine this week.
Okay. Well, we'll get back to it next week. There was too much this week. And I, for some reason, talked about Oyster for like way longer than I should have.
It's all right. It's interesting. So interesting to me anyway.